to me. So here I think the main things. You have my email address, maria.p.sentiment@net, or then the websites, and you can always find someone to talk to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Maria will actually join the next panel in blockchain. Let me get the slide. So blockchain is a word that's thrown around a lot, and as you might have heard from previous presentations, some of us don't have any clue how it's applied or what it actually means. So today we have a panel of experts who's going to clear our understanding of the technology and how it's going to be used in Hong Kong and beyond. So could I please welcome the panelists on the stage? So we have Mr. Anil from MageSpire Partners and Mr. Pedro Eloy from Business Lab, so part of our Hong Kong U MBA program, Ms. Bowie Lau from MageSpire, Ms. Avril Parkin from the Fintech Association of Hong Kong, and lastly, Maria, who just gave us the presentation.
So good afternoon, everyone. This is Anil. Thanks for taking time, and obviously the word blockchain has been used so many times, right? In fact, I don't want to steal the thunder in terms of what is blockchain. So this is a panel, again, the topic, we wanted to make it a little spicy, so it's the blockchain fever, right? So you heard about blockchain, but what exactly it is? So this is a mystery affliction, right? In the sense, everybody's talking about it. So on the panel today, we're going to just sort of give a brief of what's happening in this industry and what has it achieved so far, and what can we expect in the coming future, right? So let me just give you a brief introduction of myself, and then I'll hand it over to the panelists. And one more important point, if you see the panel, I think diversity is what we wanted to achieve. So in fact, we are on the minority. If you see, it's the 3:5 ratio. So I think in that front, it's good to see women in blockchain. So again, that was an intended effort. So a brief about myself. I'm the co-founder of MageSpire Partners, and also I have been a student of the professor from HKU MBA, that's the connection, from entrepreneurship. And by way of past background, I've been a banker for about more than a decade with some of the major banks, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, and I've worked for the exchange. I'm in an entrepreneurial journey, and like last 2 years I've spent in blockchain. So let me hand it over to each of the panelists, starting with Pedro.
Okay, so I've started my career when I was 16 as an entrepreneur and technologist. Travel a bit all around the world, so from the US, Europe, and now in Asia for the past 8 years. And here in Asia, I'm the CEO of a company called Pelham Grey, which deals with investments and startups. I'm also the chairman of the Youth and Women Entrepreneurship Task Force from the United Nations, ESCAP. And I also have the Business Lab program, which is the incubation program of Hong Kong U MBA for the past 7 years. And this was in a time that entrepreneurship was quite in the fringes of what we have today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bowie Lau. I'm an entrepreneur and an angel investor focusing on technology startups in the areas of AI, big data, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, and most importantly, blockchain. I'm founder of MageSpire, a blockchain venture development and education group with a delegated advisory arm, MageSpire Partners. I also run MageSpire Meetup Group in Hong Kong to conduct educational talks in blockchain and tokenomics. I'm a member of Fintech Association of Hong Kong and part of this blockchain committee. But the only part you need to remember is if you are interested in fintech or blockchain, just come find me. I'm glad to be here today to share some of my views and experience. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Avril Parkin. I'm co-chair for the Fintech Association Big Data Committee. I started my career as a Cisco network engineer about 20 years ago, so I'm giving my age away a little bit now. So my interest in blockchain is obviously from the connectivity aspect, so I'm interested in how things connect together and the workflow. In my previous role, I was at Thomson Reuters, so I've got quite heavily involved in how the movement of data and how different companies are consuming data. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell.
I think you heard a lot about me before, but maybe it's something I didn't tell you about is that how it relates maybe to startups. Is that I'm also a co-founder of Accelerator Frankfurt, and I'm an investor. I mainly invest in fintech and as I would say software as a service products, and my interests are in startups like fintech, cybersecurity, and of course blockchain. But mainly I'm here for the sentiment and helping people to making smarter investment decisions.
Great. In terms of the introductions, we've seen the introduction from the panelists. So if you see, it's a diverse panel from entrepreneurship. There's a real, like a professor, you got an entrepreneur. Avril touches different technologies, and sentiment, again, we saw the presentation, and in fact, we worked with the CEO, Maxim, and we know the project. That's why we are here. So it's a good start. Let me ask each of the panelists a basic question. How did you start your cracking journey into the blockchain space? And I mean your exposure journey and whatever you can sort of give the background. Yeah.
You want to start? Because you have a microphone.
We do the, don't. Okay, no problem. Yeah, so I think my world of blockchain opened probably, it should have opened probably 2009, but unfortunately it was until 2014 when I first time started thinking, okay, maybe this makes sense. And I think it took a couple more years, and when we were setting up the Accelerator Frankfurt program, we were actually recommended to do a blockchain acceleration program. Unfortunately, at that time, we thought it was way too early. And what I would say today, it's about the time. Myself, I also invest in crypto, but I would say very, very few projects of teams that I know. So I would say that's I love the opportunity that they gave us, but I think it's not for everything. And yeah, I find it very exciting to work in this field.
So I had first heard about blockchain when I was in telecommunications, and one of my friends left HSBC to start a startup in Hong Kong, and he was telling me about Bitcoin. And by the end of lunch, I told him that I wanted to buy one of these Bitcoins, and he said, no, it's high risk, you don't need to buy a whole one, but I'm not very good at maths, so I only like to work in whole numbers, so I was determined to buy one, and I'm glad I did. It's not worth what it was at the beginning of the year, but what it did was give me skin in the game, and that was my first experience into cryptocurrency. And I watch avidly about the other platforms that are coming out and the other tokens and other cryptocurrencies. I think it's really fascinating how all of this is happening, and yet you can still speak to people on the street who have no idea what's going on. So I think it's really interesting how the landscape is changing, but once you start getting involved in it, it is very addictive.
So the first rule of blockchain is you do not talk about blockchain. The second rule of blockchain is you do not talk about blockchain. The third rule of blockchain is if this is the first time with blockchain, you have to fight. Let me explain. First, you have to fight. You have to fight the notion that blockchain is complicated and you wouldn't be able to understand anything about it. Second, you have to fight to find time to educate yourself about blockchain. And there are many channels for you to get yourself educated. Third, you have to fight your laziness and start imagining a new world with blockchain. Fourth, you fight your lack of faith in blockchain and start using this technology to your advantage. And this is exactly what I did.
Well, I will answer the question in three ways. The first part is because I have a very long corporate background as well. So I work with CNN in the US. I work with International Chambers of Commerce in Paris, and I've been working with a big supply chain here for the past 7.5 years. Lian Fong here in Hong Kong as Senior Vice President of Digital and Technology. So I think that my first connection with blockchain was in terms of payment. So how can all these cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and so on, how can they be used as payment methods? So I think this was one of my first contacts with blockchain. Now, as an entrepreneur and kind of leading the business lab at Hong Kong UMBA school, what we realize is that we always keep our radar on for all that has to be done with technologies and the upcoming technologies to ensure that the aspiring entrepreneurs that are starting to incubate their projects, they are aware and see if it's of use to their projects. So last year we had some projects that were kind of somehow touching on the side of the cryptocurrencies, but what we also realizing now is that the blockchain goes way beyond just the cryptocurrencies. So if we go through the tokens and the utilization, we can also almost tokenize anything that is or may be of value. So I think that the journey with blockchain has started somehow on the payment side from a corporate perspective, but now realize it's kind of ingraining and going through different areas of society as an entrepreneur as well.
Great. So I think from the panelists, you heard varied sort of experiences of each of them on their journey to blockchain. Now, let's go a little bit into the technology itself, right? So the technology has been in place for a decade, right? So the next question to the panelists is, where do you see blockchain technology being most used? And beyond the hype, right? Like, is it a reality or a hype? So maybe a short 30-second sort of view.
Okay. As I mentioned before, my initial connection with blockchain was on terms of payment methods, but I think it has gone way beyond that. So, for example, if we look at voting, for example, if we're looking at signing contracts, if we're looking at storing identification or ownership records, we're starting to see that it's not only private corporations using it, but also governments using it on a variety of ways. So I think that this dissemination from what we're hearing right now and what's already happening on what's in the about to happen is quite a long way. So I'm quite keen to say that even though it's still quite an early technology, there's still kind of whoever has launched it 10 years ago is still kind of maybe going through parts of the technology to ensure that it's kind of fully works. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that organizations or parts of the supply chain that we would not associate blockchain with, they're already experimenting, and many of them are already deploying a lot of projects with blockchain.
I think this is a loaded question. I agree the Star Wars movie, A New Hope, was made in 1977, and 40 years later, we're still struggling to travel in the spaceship. But I don't think blockchain is going to take another 40 years to come to reality. I know that we started off on the wrong foot, Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency enabled by blockchain technology, scaring all the governments about how easily it was possible to transfer money without a central authority. People started to fear that Bitcoin would become an outlaw currency used only for illegal activities, given its anonymous nature. But in reality, Bitcoin just unleashed people's imagination, and blockchain gave hope for equality, security, and social justice. So sometimes the wrong choices might bring you to the right place. It just takes time for people to understand and feel comfortable to adopt blockchain, but it's not going to take ages.
So in terms of financial services, we already saw NASDAQ launch the private share network on blockchain 2015, I think it was. So, I mean, but that's not exciting. Nobody cares about a private network, right? So I think the more interesting use cases are ones where there's collaboration between multiple different parties. And so if we look at projects like the Hong Kong MA trade finance platform that's being built, there's 7 banks and an insurance company all working together, all deciding on the same platform to use, all deciding to work together and actually use this technology to be able to share information, transactional data. And then the second phase of this project is going live next year, which will mean that they will then be able to plug into other sources of off-chain data, which means that they will have the full service. And then going on from that, they'll be able to connect to the Singapore trade finance platform. So I think we need to look at those examples where we're seeing multiple organizations collaborating together, and when we see cross-border, then we know it's really happening.
Yeah, I think it's definitely maybe still in a bit of hype stage, the blockchain, but I think there's a great use cases, as was mentioned before, like in legal, in land ownership, in healthcare, and maybe also to understand that it's not maybe the tool for everything. There are certain things that you can just have a database and you use it there. But on those places where you really need this like trustless communication with someone, and you want to maybe anonymize certain data that you give. I think Europe, we are very sensitive about privacy, and I think one of the problems with blockchain maybe is going to be maybe something else will replace it. But today is the fact that you cannot change anything in it. That's the whole core idea, that it's immutable. So I guess this is the problem that needs to be somehow solved.
So, I think the technology has moved beyond the hype. we are seeing some real use cases, and in fact, it's still the evolution, right? So, we think in the next 5 to 10 years, we will basically have more use cases, and it's just not the cryptocurrencies, right? Because if you saw one of the earlier definitions, blockchain equal to cryptocurrencies. So it's beyond that. There is enterprise solutions, and it's a new technology. I think there needs to be some more sort of use cases, and in the next 5 to 10 years, we would see more adoption, and it's just not a buzzword, right? So next, I would move to individual questions based on the panelists' background. First, let me start with the professor. So, Professor Pedro, as a person involved in inspiring entrepreneurs, and including myself, where do you see the role of blockchain in startups, especially since you run the business lab at HKU MBA, and what kind of edge it can give to entrepreneurs?
I think first we have already ascertained that blockchain goes beyond just cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and so on. So it goes beyond the financial sphere. And so if we move on to the overall use cases that have been spoken on this panel about where blockchain can be applied, and we kind of focus or we look into the projects of entrepreneurs, blockchain has to be considered throughout the incubation journey. I mean, it's not to say that everyone should use blockchain. It's not to say that everyone should use it as a token of utility or token of a cryptocurrency or even raising funds through blockchain. But entrepreneurs should understand what blockchain is, should understand what are the use cases, should understand where the technology is, and then should then see a fit for purpose. If it makes sense for their cases. Now, having said this, I think it's also important for entrepreneurs to, even if they're not applying blockchain, for them to be aware of the overall spectrum of blockchain, because their project may be quite analog, for example, may not have too many of these kind of distributed ledgers involved, but then they may want to, for example, raise capital through or use ICOs or kind of go into the cryptocurrency or to the blockchain through other ways. Within our network, we have a variety of startups and entrepreneurs that they are already using blockchain, and they're very keen to create this kind of joint ventures and partnerships. So it is of critical importance for startups or for young entrepreneurs to understand what it is out there, because even if they don't use, they may end up doing joint ventures or partnerships with startups or with other corporations that may wish to kind of bring them into this kind of ecosystem. So I would say that on one hand, understand what it is, this whole blockchain technology for young entrepreneurs. What we're also seeing, as if you allow me, is that within the business lab, we started 7 years ago with Hong Kong UMBA, and what we had in the beginning was a series of very active entrepreneurs that were very keen on doing entrepreneurship. Now, fast forward 7 years from now, what we're seeing is a lot of corporate people that may wish not to launch their own startup, but when they go back to their JP Morgans, Goldman Sachs, and to their companies, they may get involved into projects that may somehow relate to entrepreneurship. So what we're seeing now is, number one, the trend of students and alumni that want to understand and to be involved with this entrepreneurship cycle, but at the same time, the entrepreneurs that are very keen to understand.
Great. My next question is to Ms. Bowie. So, as a serial entrepreneur, currently leading, as an angel investor and blockchain entrepreneur, and given your passion for education and community outreach, what are the key problems in encouraging blockchain adoption, and what are your tips and tricks to avoid getting stuck when navigating through the blockchain space?
So, as an angel investor, I have seen a lot of big money chasing bad ideas. The fundraising process is not really fair to an entrepreneur, and more often good ideas get stuck due to lack of timely funding. The new crowdfunding resolution, ICO, initial coin offering, is a good starting point to level the playing field, so that entrepreneurs can directly reach out to the end investors who are willing to support and back their ideas. But watch out, with great money comes with great responsibility. As an entrepreneur and educator, I can safely say help is always available from the blockchain community. That is the beauty of this technology. It started off as a community-driven, decentralized social movement, and that spirit enables people to share and cooperate to help each other. So whenever you're stuck with respect to blockchain, reach out to the community. I run one myself, and even if I cannot answer the question, I can definitely help you connect with someone who can.
So my next question is to Avril. So in your sort of corporate career in financial services, you've seen various technologies. We saw the ABC, so now I would like to see the ABCD. So which is AI, big data, cloud, and the D is for DLT, distributed ledger technology. So how do you see the interplay of these technologies shaping our future?
They do. I mean, you don't get one of those technologies on by itself, right? So, you know, with more data comes the need for cloud and processing, and then you're able to perform analytics, and then you can store your assets or your records on the blockchain. So they're all connected. My favorite example is healthcare, because I'm wearing one of these Apple Watches. So if anyone's wearing any other wearable technology that's monitoring your heart rate, how far you're walking, I'm looking forward to the day when my, health insurance is actually going to be using some data about me to lower my premiums so that I don't have to pay as much. That's a great example of how, all of the IoT, data, cloud, everything is brought together. And, if the insurance company is using blockchain to store my health records, maybe when I go to the doctor, he won't have to go through lots of files to actually get the information that he needs, and it will all be connected, and he will know my history because of my wearable technology. Take it even further, if you want to go even further out, I'm looking forward to the day when I can walk into a shop and a clothing retail shop, and my clothes are talking to the shop. So, I can actually get a digital wardrobe. I can get recommendations about pieces of clothing that may go with clothing that I have at home, because they know how many times it's been washed, because my clothing is actually, giving off signals that says that it's still, in good condition, that the color hasn't been worn out, that it will go with something in the shop that they have today. And, all of those things are using all of those technologies that you mentioned. And I'm looking forward to those kinds of things making my life easier.
That's great. And my question to Maria is, as we saw, as a serial entrepreneur, currently with Sentiment, an exciting blockchain project which touches two technologies, right, which is data science and blockchain. So what has been your key challenge when explaining the confluence of these two technologies into one project, right?
I think we prefer the word opportunity to challenges, but yes, definitely. I think is always, the biggest, I think, issue, the challenge, opportunity is that there's a lot of data out there. And especially when you are dealing with data that's on-chain, that's on blockchain, there's massive amounts of data, but it's not like always very timely. So there's, the transaction time, if you would do something with Bitcoin, is maybe 5 minutes. So it's not like maybe in a traditional finance world when you expect to get milliseconds or nanoseconds, when things are happening. So the trading and these kind of things happen in a little bit different kind of time scale in the blockchain world. But I think it offers a lot of good opportunities. But of course, there's also like what kind of algorithm do you choose when you analyze the data that you have? And of course, we also, with Sentiment, we are dealing a lot with social data. So there's data that we have to label and understand what does it mean, so that we can provide value to those who are using our platform. I would say those are the challenges or opportunities.
Thanks. I'm just conscious of time. We have a few questions, but let me just skip one and go to one question, which is what are the challenges blocking or slowing down the widespread adoption of blockchain technology by various sections of the economy, including institutions, government, and industries?
Well, I think what I mentioned from European point of view, I think for us maybe the biggest challenge is clearly the one, less regulatory. I think there's a certain kind of things that you can do and can't do with blockchain. I think I'm not talking now about crypto market or the ICOs, but like how can you share the data and how can you anonymize it in a way that when people decide that they have the right to be forgotten, they should be forgotten. I think that's probably one. And of course, if I think about the finance markets, there is also maybe still, although we talk very positively about, how the banks and the finance institutes are trying to bring blockchain to the world. But of course, there is a lot of resistance also due to, things like how do they actually make their money and margins. So there's like a natural maybe resistance in this phase.
Yeah, I think regulation, data privacy, if we put all those things aside, the technology is still new, and a lot of companies are still evaluating, do they use Hyperledger, do they use Ethereum, do they prefer to, go with, what their peers are using, and it seems that different pockets are using different platforms. But even, the platforms that have their own proprietary code, they're still going through multiple versions, and, the stability and the scalability, it's still unclear, and there's going to be many, many more versions of these codes coming out. So I think, it's good to be involved, and it's good to have people, developing for you, and maybe look at some use cases and collaborate with some of your peers and get some good understanding of how it works. But I think we've still got a way to go to get, code that is actually, freely available and everyone is happy to use. And that's another thing, nobody wants to use the same thing. So we need standards in place so that, all the banks, are not using different platforms. And we're not going to get one platform probably, so then we're going to need the intercommunication between the platforms, how you can jump from one to another. Maybe if, your insurance company is using one and, your banking is using another, but then you want to pay them, and, all of that connectivity and intercollaboration has to be worked out. So I think we've got a ways to go in terms of the actual development of the code.
Sure.
I think there are 3 challenges: FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubts.
I would mention like every technology in the past. I mean, if we look, for example, for the .com bubble, the first one in Silicon Valley, if we look at, for example, the electric cars and so on, everything gets its own curve of testing and so on. So I think that the blockchain is in this phase of first of all understanding of what it is, blockchain. So I think that the part of education is quite critical as well. Number 2, we've spoke about it, the regulations and how to fit this within the different industries, and then number 3 is the I would call it the utilization. I mean, how can we pass from a couple of success cases to a bit more of a mass market? And this, of course, this will have to depend on or be subject to validation of technology that has been launched the 10 years ago, 5 years ago, to understand how can we make the best use of the technology per se.
Great. I think we're just hitting the time. I would like to ask a summary sort of question, and this is for each of the panelists. What is the one advice you would give to entrepreneurs, students, and the general audience today on blockchain and how they can cure this mystery affliction? So maybe a quick summary. Yeah.
I would say just 2 words: learn and get involved. So learn as much as you can, get involved either actively or passively with those that are using it already, so that you can have an understanding, and then decide whether, in case you're an entrepreneur or a corporatepreneur, meaning an entrepreneur inside a corporation dealing with innovation, if blockchain, if and where and how it may be of use for your company or for your startup.
I agree. Do not underestimate yourself and do not give up, because from light from darkness comes darkness, and from darkness light. Even though blockchain can be very complicated and makes you go to the dark side, just don't give up and stay strong. The force will be with you, because eventually you will figure out in your own way. At that point, blockchain expertise will be the most powerful skill set you will have.
So if you don't have a digital wallet, I think that's the first thing to do. I wouldn't advise buying loads of any particular currency at the moment, but just to get yourself involved. So the moment I bought my Bitcoin, I had skin in the game. It made me interested. It made me stay on top of what was happening. So if you don't have any cryptocurrency at all, then open an account. There's plenty of platforms in Hong Kong. Get yourself some cryptocurrency, and then you can start your journey. But I agree with what's been said already. Education is a full-time job, staying on top of what is happening in this market, both from the technology and from the cryptocurrency side. But there are lots of platforms, and the Fintech Association has a committee dedicated to blockchain. So, get yourself out there, and students can actually join the Fintech Association for a very nominal fee. So I think if there are any students in here that are not members of the Fintech Association, why not? Why wouldn't you join?
I think this is a great lead to what I want to say. So I think absolutely, of course, there's blockchain technologies used in other fields also, but if we talk about the crypto markets, what better way is than to use platforms and making some advertising for ourselves. So that is actually our goal, to provide, data insights for people for who are new to the crypto markets, and of course those who are also who know about it. And the collaboration, as I said, the challenge that we have now, this is a great way also rewarding your work. So set yourself a goal, go to the platform, look at the data, and find some great insights. Take part of this challenge and even win 1,000 Sun tokens.
Great. So in summary, I would like to just summarize. We said blockchain mystery affliction. So the affliction continues, and the way to sort of explore it is get involved, and education is one aspect. In fact, Avril touched upon the Fintech Association, who she's like three of us, Bowie, Avril, and myself are in the blockchain committee. And there's much for students, right? And entrepreneurship, obviously the MBA aspect, the entrepreneurship comes in, and we've seen blockchain projects in this space. So, and we have an actual project, right? Who's using data science, and they're actually going to reward students. And so get involved. So it's not only about cryptocurrencies. There is an education angle into it. And obviously we heard HKU, the FinTech courses, right? And blockchain. So let me thank all the panelists and the audience for taking time for this chain, and we all welcome you for the Hong Kong FinTech Week. So we all will be part of the FinTech Week later on. So that's it. Oh, one more thing.
Okay. One more thing. I think we spoke about Hong Kong FinTech Association, but I think we also have to speak about your organization, MaxPire. Because you guys, Bowie and Anil, you guys are doing an excellent work and job on bringing education to Hong Kong about blockchain. So I think I'm an avid fan, so I've been to a lot of their events. So I will recommend them profusely for you guys that want to know more about blockchain to kind of check what the guys at MaxPire are doing.
Thanks. Yeah, and on that note, we've got a meetup by the name of MakeSpire. It's a free, and we hold education talks into tokenomics and blockchain. So feel free to attend or reach out to all of us. Yeah. Thank you.